The Rise and Fall of the Soviet Union, 1991. A deep dive into the historical crossroads. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 was a historic event that marked the end of the Cold War and the dissolution of one of the world's superpowers. Several factors contributed to the collapse, and the process unfolded over a relatively short period. Here's an elaboration on the key aspects of the collapse. Economic decline. The Soviet economy was stagnant and inefficient, characterized by a centralized planned economy. Mismanagement, inefficiency, and a focus on heavy industry at the expense of consumer goods led to economic decline. The arms race with the United States placed a heavy burden on the Soviet economy, diverting resources away from areas that needed development. Political reforms. Mikhail Gorbachev, who became the General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in 1985, initiated a series of political and economic reforms known as perestroika, restructuring, and glasnost, openness. Perestroika aimed at introducing market-oriented reforms, allowing private ownership, and decentralizing economic planning. Glasnost sought to increase political openness and freedom of expression. Nationalism and independence movements. The various ethnic groups within the Soviet Union began to assert their national identities, leading to the rise of nationalism. Independence movements gained momentum in the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and other republics, seeking autonomy and, eventually, full independence. Political unrest. The reforms introduced by Gorbachev led to increased political openness but also created tensions within the Communist Party. Hardliners opposed the reforms, while reformists wanted more radical changes. The August 1991 coup attempt by conservative elements within the Soviet government aimed to reverse Gorbachev's reforms but failed, further weakening central authority. Baltic states and other republics declare independence. In 1990–1991, several Soviet republics, including the Baltic states, Ukraine, and others, declared their independence from the Soviet Union. The declaration of independence by these republics weakened the central government's control and accelerated the disintegration of the Soviet Union. The Belovezha Accords. In December 1991, the leaders of Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, Byelorussia, met in Belovezha Forest in Belarus and signed the Belovezha Accords, formally declaring the dissolution of the Soviet Union. The newly formed Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS, replaced the Soviet Union as an association of sovereign states, marking the end of the Soviet era. Resignation of Gorbachev. As a result of these developments, Gorbachev resigned as the president of the Soviet Union on December 25, 1991, and the Soviet flag was lowered for the last time over the Kremlin. The collapse of the Soviet Union had profound implications for global geopolitics, ending the Cold War and reshaping the political landscape of Eurasia. It also led to the emergence of new independent states and the transformation of the former Soviet republics. Embark on a thought-provoking journey through the dissolution of the Soviet Union, 1991, in an engaging Q&A session. Join us as we unravel the intricacies of this historic event that marked the end of the Cold War and the disintegration of a superpower. In a series of questions and answers, we'll systematically explore the why, where, when, who, how, and what behind the collapse. Together, we will navigate the economic challenges, political reforms, and nationalist movements that characterize this pivotal chapter in the history of geopolitical transformation. Join the conversation as we analyze the strategic decisions, examine the geopolitical shifts that shaped its narrative, and appreciate the enduring impact that has fundamentally altered the global political landscape since 1991. Why did the Soviet Union collapse in 1991? The collapse of the Soviet Union was influenced by a combination of economic decline, political reforms, and the rise of nationalist movements within its republics. Where did the economic challenges stem from in the Soviet Union? The Soviet economy faced stagnation and inefficiency, aggravated by the arms race, mismanagement, and a focus on heavy industry at the expense of consumer goods. When did the pivotal political reforms, like perestroika and glasnost, take place? Mikhail Gorbachev initiated perestroika, restructuring, and glasnost, openness, in the mid-1980s as part of efforts to reform the Soviet political and economic system. Who were key figures in the Soviet political landscape during this period? Mikhail Gorbachev, the General Secretary of the Communist Party, played a central role. Boris Yeltsin, the first president of Russia, also emerged as a key figure in the dissolution process. How did nationalist movements contribute to the collapse of the Soviet Union? Nationalist movements gained momentum in various Soviet republics, leading to declarations of independence, particularly in the Baltic states and Ukraine. What was the significance of the Belovezha Accords in 1991? The Belovezha Accords, signed by Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, formally declared the dissolution of the Soviet Union, paving the way for the creation of the Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS. Were there any attempted counteractions against the reforms? Yes. In August 1991, hardliners within the Soviet government attempted a coup to reverse Gorbachev's reforms. The coup failed, further weakening central authority. What role did the Baltic states play in the Soviet Union's collapse? The Baltic states, including Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, declared independence in the late 1980s and early 1990s, contributing significantly to the dissolution of the Soviet Union. How did the collapse of the Soviet Union impact global geopolitics? The collapse marked the end of the Cold War, leading to a shift in global power dynamics and the emergence of new independent states in Eurasia. What was the final moment that symbolized the end of the Soviet Union? On December 25, 1991, Mikhail Gorbachev resigned as president of the Soviet Union, and the Soviet flag was lowered for the last time over the Kremlin, marking the formal end of the USSR. Thank you for joining us on this insightful exploration of the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. We delved into the economic challenges, political reforms, and nationalist movements that shaped this historic event. The collapse of the Soviet Union not only marked the end of the Cold War but also had profound implications for global geopolitics. As we reflect on the strategic decisions, political maneuvers, and the enduring impact of this transformation, we invite you to continue the conversation. Feel free to share your thoughts, questions, or reflections on social media using the hashtag #SovietUnion1991 discussion. Stay tuned for more explorations into pivotal moments in history. Thank you for being part of this engaging conversation.